Tina, also known as Little T, and welcome back to our channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome to the Big B and Little T channel. Today I'm going to do a book roundup for the books that I have either read or listened to for February and March 2023. And I'm going to group some of them together just by the kinds of books they are, just to make it a little bit easier to follow along. And like I said in my very first book video in January, I read mostly on my iPad, which I've got down there, it's plugged in, charging up, or my phone because I have the Kindle app on there. I don't have an actual Kindle. I find it's easier just to read here at home on my iPad. And I haven't actually gone to the public library here. I do have a library card, but I check my books out mostly through the Libby app, which is our Kentucky library, which is online, and I can get books from there. We also have a subscription to Amazon's Kindle Unlimited, where you pay I think it's $10.99 a month, and you can check out any of the books they have that are Kindle Unlimited for free. And so those are two good resources where I don't actually have to buy books. And today I actually have 3 books that, thanks to my friend Rhonda, who has loaned these to me, and I'll be able to actually hold a book that I read, where mostly you would see a book cover. I have posted up here one of these corners to show you the cover of the book I've read. And mainly just because when we moved here last summer from Perry, we downsized a lot and got rid of a lot of books that we had. And some of those were books that I had held on to for quite some time. Some I had read more than once, some not, and just decided to pass those on to somebody else that could use those. So I don't have a lot of books coming in to our apartment here, and ones that I do have I'll probably pass on to other friends or even give them away to one of our community outlets here. I guess it's called Hope House Community Center, and they have things like that for sale for people that need books. As I showed you last time, I use my bullet journal to keep track of the books I've read, and so my bookshelf for January, February, and March looks like this. And I took the books from there and put it on this sloppy piece of paper here so I could kind of group them and talk about them all together. So the first ones I'm going to talk about are 2 books that I actually have physical copies for. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. You would think this would be the first one, but actually this one comes first. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and then It Starts With Us is one that you read afterwards, and you really should read the first book before you read the second book. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense to you if you didn't. And the story deals with domestic violence, so that could be a trigger warning for you before you read it. And It Ends With Us is going to be dealing with the end of putting an end to domestic violence, so it doesn't go on to the next generation. But it's a romance, and it reads really quickly. It's about Lily and Ryle. Lily owns a flower shop, and Ryle is a surgeon, a neurosurgeon, and their romance moves quite along. Lily's growing up in a household where she witnessed domestic abuse, and how she doesn't want that to be a part of her life as an adult. And so it's got some situations that could be really tender and hurtful if you've been through that yourself or witnessed that before. It Starts With Us tells the story about a homeless boy that Lily actually met when she was a teenager, and he was a little bit older than her. He was a teen when he was homeless, and this deals with them when they are adults. They have a very close relationship, but secretive when they are teenagers, and he understands what kind of household she is in. He has a not good family life at all, as you can imagine, since he's homeless. And this deals with what happens when they come back in contact with each other as adults. And she's this owner of a flower shop, and he has some restaurants, and how they deal with the whole situation she's had with Ryle in the first book, It Ends With Us. So I rated both of these books 4 stars. They read really quickly, very interesting, and you get such a good feeling of the relationships and the people. You get to know them, and you find yourself rooting for the relationships, and you'll see when you read them which relationships you will actually be rooting for. So that's It Starts With Us and It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. 2 two nonfiction books that I read in February and March. One actually I listened to on audio, and that's called Group by Christie Tate, and it's her experience as an adult going to group therapy and the people that are in her group, her therapist, and how she works through a lot of her, I guess, adult problems with not ever finding the right person to be with, and what it is working through herself and through her past to get her to the point where she can have a good, healthy relationship. And it kind of exposes all the things that she has to go through and that her therapist puts her through to get her to the point where she is emotionally healthy adult. It is quite interesting. It's quite, it goes into very much detail and private information. So it's quite into the private aspects of her life and quite explicit. So just be aware of that. But it does show how group therapy can be a good model for people to go through to find the root causes of what their issues are and to become a healthy adult. So that was interesting. It's kind of a memoir about therapy. It's called Group by Christie Tate. The second nonfiction book I read was one that I found in the Verbo that we stayed in over spring break, and that was called Prohibition in Bardstown. It had a subtitle, I didn't write that down, but Bardstown is a city here in Kentucky, and this was all about the years of Prohibition from 1913, it was 13 years, so it ended, I can't remember the exact years, I'll put them up here. I'll put them up here somewhere. But it was whiskey, bourbon whiskey particularly has been a big economic driver in the state of Kentucky, and this told the story of what it was like for the state and for the families that were involved in the distilleries here in Kentucky going through Prohibition, and all the players and the parts, the federal government, the state government, the families, the people in the communities, the farmers. I didn't realize all that went into an enterprise such as distilling bourbon. The farmers that make the corn, they have the cattle, they have land, and all that goes into it. So it was very interesting, and it's by two authors together, Dixie Hubbs and Doris Settles. And Doris Settles had written in the inside of this book a little note, and it said, "To you, cousin," or "Love your cousin." So she was related to the people that actually ran the Verbo that we stayed in. So I thought that was kind of cool that these people we had stayed in their house had a long history in Kentucky. So that was just one that's really, for me, living in a new state, it's kind of interesting to learn more about the history of the state and, you know, in the place that I live now, to know more about it. Okay, I guess romance books. Book Lovers is another one that Rhonda let me read her copy of it, an actual physical copy, and it's called Book Lovers. It's by Emily Henry, and I have another one on my bookcase down below that I actually bought for myself by Emily Henry that's an earlier book of her, Beach Read, and I have not yet read that. Book Lovers is about two people, main characters, and they're kind of they're in the same line of business, being an agent and an editor for books in New York City. She's a really hard-going agent, and he's really top-of-the-line editor, and the first time they have an interaction, they kind of butt heads, they don't get along very well, and then they come back in contact again later in a small town where her sister, the main person in this book, is... The main character in this book is Nora, and her sister Libby takes her away to a small town in the South, and it happens to be where this other editor is staying because his parents are there, they're getting older. He is taking the job of a son, of helping his parents get along away from his job in New York. So they come into contact here, and it's kind of like enemies to lovers, I guess would be the trope that this is. A lot of back and forth. You get a lot of the Southern culture in the town where they're staying, the small town, and just what it's like for people that are used to New York City having to be in this much smaller town. And then there's a side story going on, of course, with her sister Libby, who is pregnant with her third child, and what's going on with her and her husband, who has obviously taking care of the two children back in New York while they're taking this vacation in the South. So it's a very quick read, very interesting. The writing is excellent, so I would highly recommend this one if you're into this kind of book. Okay, that's it for the physical copies of the books that I have. The romance book is called The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh, and in this book it's got some romance in it, but also kind of a mystery to it as well. Emma is a marine biologist, super smart, top of her game. This takes place in England, and her husband Leo is an obituary writer for a local newspaper, and she's got some secrets that she's been hiding, and Leo of course doesn't know any of these things, but she's had some issues with depression, and they have a young daughter, and through these troubles, he starts to see some cracks and things that are happening with some people that are in the business with her and her work, and journalism work. And so the whole part of it is trying to get back to figure out, can she ever tell him the truth about her life from before? Or does he just have to find out these clues himself and figure out who she is, and why would she have lied about her past? That is a very quick read. It's called The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh. And then another book I read that is a thriller is called Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. And this is described as Golden Girls Meet James Bond. There's 4 women, and these women are now 60 years old. I can relate. I'm turning 60 next month. So they're around my age, and they've been this group that was highly trained, kind of like a CIA operative group that works for this place called the Museum. And it's not actually a museum, that's just the name of what it's called, but they are directed to go around the world internationally taking care of business as the way like the CIA might, with covert missions where they have to get rid of bad people, bad guys throughout the world. But as they've come to their age of 60, it's time for them to retire. So they're sent on this cruise by their company, the museum, and to be this delightful retirement cruise. But they find out while they're on this cruise that there's how would you say, a target on their head, all 4 of them. Somebody is trying to kill them. And so now it turns around, they aren't actually retiring. They've got to figure out who has a target on their head, and can they find out first before they all get killed. So it's just a race to find out the answer in that. And this book is boom, boom, boom. The thriller goes right along, and you can really identify each 4 distinct personalities and where they are in their lives. You can imagine at 60 all the different positions they might be in, with husbands, or maybe divorced, or somebody's passed on. So Killers of a Certain Age. If you like thrillers and you like fast-paced books, I would definitely recommend that one. Let's see what I gave it. Killers of a Certain Age. I gave it 4 stars. I read a couple of YA romance books. The first one is called 6 Impossible Things. It's written by Fiona Wood. And in this book, Dan, he's in a situation which is very difficult. You can imagine he's into high school, and his parents separated, gone their separate ways. Dad has just come out as gay. Their financial situation is not good. His mom has to live in a house and brings Dan along with her to live in a house that has been inherited of sorts, but they still have the whole house is full of things. And he is just in this situation of having to go to a new school, being in a new neighborhood, the kid on the block, not knowing how to fit in. Kind of a typical high school story if you can understand that, or may have lived that yourself. But he has this list of 6 impossible things that he thinks just can't happen, and if they did, then maybe his life would be better. For those, they are kiss Estelle, who is a girl that he is entranced by at school, get a job, cheer his mother up. She is trying to run a wedding cake business, not doing very well at that. Try not to be a nerd or a loser. Actually talk to his father when his father calls on the telephone. And the last one, figure out how to be a good person. So he goes through the book, and the 6 impossible things, you learn whether they are actually impossible or not. It's a quick read, it's a cute read, it helps with some, if you have some teenage angst, or you can remember those times you went through, that'd be a book to recommend to anybody that is of that age, a young adult, teenager. But I enjoyed it also. Being a former teacher, I can identify with picture books all the way to books that people my age read. So this is a good young adult romance. The second young adult romance book I read is called The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett, and that's by Chelsea Sedoti, or Sedoti, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And in this book, Hawthorne Creeley, she's the main character, or from her point of view, she goes to school with Lizzie Lovett. Lizzie Lovett is older than her. Lizzie Lovett is all put together. She's just it. She's very super popular. Hawthorne Creeley is not, and she just can't stand Lizzie Lovett. But Lizzie Lovett has graduated, moved on. Hawthorne's still in school, but Lizzie Lovett goes missing. And it's just this huge mystery for the whole town. Everybody tries to find her. Time goes on, they can't find her, and then the search starts to dwindle just because they can't come up with any clues. But Hawthorne thinks she has figured out why and how it is that Lizzie has disappeared. And so she ends up taking a job that Lizzie had. She gets together with the boyfriend that Lizzie had, and she does her best to try to figure out what actually happened to Lizzie Lovett. And what was it about her life that maybe nobody knows that she's trying to find out, and what she believes could actually be true. And it's truly like this mystery, trying to find out what has happened, and again, the angst of being a teen and not fitting in, not feeling like that you are, the same as your peers, you just don't have any friends. It's an excellent book. I rated that 3.5 stars. So I rated it, and then the one before that, 6 Impossible Things, I rated 4 stars. I need to be better about saying that when I'm talking about it. And then I've been listening to on audio, mainly because the books weren't available in print. They were on hold, so I just went to the audio. And I love to do that when I'm walking, running, in the gym, on the treadmill, or just I'm sitting crocheting. My hands are busy, but I can still listen with my ears, so I don't have to worry about turning a page or anything. But it's a magical baking series by Bailey Cates. And I've rated all of these that I've read 4 stars. Being a former baker, they really appeal to me just because of the baking aspect. So Katie Lightfoot is the main character in this book. She's in her 20s, and she has moved to Savannah, Georgia from, I think it's Akron, Ohio, where her mom and dad still live, but she has moved here to be with her aunt and uncle. Her uncle's a retired fireman, and they are starting a coffee shop bakery. And so that's why it's called Magical Baking Mysteries. Each of these is a mystery on its own. You don't really have to have gone in order from 1 to 10, but because they each stand alone, and you'll get the backup of who the characters are as you're listening to the books or reading the books. But they are, the ones that I've been through so far, Brownies and Broomsticks, Bewitched, Bothered and Biscotti, Charms and Chocolate Chips, Some Enchanted Éclair, and Magic and Macaroons. And as you can kind of tell from the title, there's some magic involved. She's what's called a hedge witch, where she uses herbs and things that are grown to actually do her sort of magic. And her aunt and some other ladies in the community have their own little witchy gathering. They call it the Spell Book Club. And they're just cozy mysteries. Murders keep happening in this town of Savannah, and she always somehow gets herself sucked into it. So I love them. I want to finish 6 through 10 when I can get my hands on them. So those are the magical baking mysteries. Again, I said I rated all those 4 stars. There's 2 young adult fantasies that I've read. I've just started reading a little bit of fantasy. It's not really ever been a genre I've been interested before, and they are YA, so they're young adult fantasy. To me, it's kind of easier to start off with the young adult fantasy. They tend to, so far, not be as long as other books, and I can kind of get into that just from a younger person's standpoint before trying maybe a big, thicker, more adult one. And they are by Victoria Schwab. She writes a lot of fantasy books. There's another series I'm going to try and get into after I get the 3rd book in this one. I read the first one, and I listened to the second one. The first one's called Ghost City, came out in 2018, and the second one is Tunnel of Bones. The main character in this one is a young girl named Cassidy, and her parents, dad's a historian, her mom is she believes in ghosts, and she's a kind of a ghost, she's not a hunter exactly, but she's trying to discover ghostly things. But her mom and dad have been asked to do a television series on finding the most ghostly cities in the world. So in Ghost City, the first book, they go off to Edinburgh, and you have to know that Cassidy, you find this out early in the book, she's had where she almost drowned, and then she was saved by this friend of hers, who you find out, Jacob, is actually a ghost, and he is with her all the time. Her dad thinks she's talking to an imaginary friend when she's talking to him, but she can actually go back and forth between the land of the living and, as she says, behind the veil into the land of the ghosts, lands of the dead. So when they go to Edinburgh to find, to film their series, the parents, she has her own experience herself, and she meets another ghost hunter there named Laura that actually tells her more about her life and what her life's going to be like and what her purpose is. So in the second book, Tunnel of Bones, which I listened to on auditory, they are going to Paris and going underneath the city to the catacombs, and she makes friends in that city, but there's, a ghost that's doing pell-mell all around the city, and she has to figure out a way to help him pass on to the next level so that he's not terrorizing Paris. And again, her ghost friend Jacob is coming along for the ride. So it's kind of ghosty, kind of scary, but not too scary. It's no horror or anything like that, but it's kind of ghost. It's called YA Fantasies. And I gave these books, what did I give them? 4 stars for Tunnel of Bones and Ghost City, 4 stars. So I gave 4 stars to all of those. And I think that is it. I have read, we still have a few days left in March. It's March 26th. Right now. Hey guys, Editing Tina here, and I want to put in an additional book that I forgot to add on my list originally, and I can't believe I forgot this book because I really like medical mysteries or anything to do with medical stuff. And this book is by Judy Melinek, I think is how you say her last name, and yeah, Melinek, and it's called First Cut, and I'm just going to read to you the synopsis. This was really good. It's a young rookie medical examiner, a suspicious case, an underworld plot only she saw coming. For San Francisco's newest medical examiner, Dr. Jessie Teska, it was supposed to be a fresh start, a new job in a new city, a way to escape her own dark past. Instead, she faces a chilling discovery when an opioid overdose case contains hints of something more sinister. Jessie's superiors urge her to close the case, but as more bodies land on her autopsy table, she uncovers a constellation of deaths that point to an elaborate plot involving drug dealers and Bitcoin brokers. So this is very interesting to me. If you like books that are fast and have a really deep mystery and also involve anything medical, then you will definitely like this book. She has another one coming out after this series. It's called Aftershock, and our library doesn't have it yet, so I'm very eager for that to happen. I definitely rated this one 5 stars. And I'm currently listening to Watching You by Lisa Jewell. Hello, Editing Tina once again, and I started to talk about the book Watching You in the video, which I had not yet finished, but now it's April 3rd and I'm editing this to go up this week, and I have already finished Watching You. I counted it, well, I finished it on the very last day of March, so it was my last March read. And here's a synopsis of that one. Melville Heights is one of the nicest neighborhoods in Bristol, England. Home to doctors and lawyers and old money academics. It's not the sort of place where people are brutally murdered in their own kitchens, but it is the sort of place where everyone has a secret, and everyone is watching you. As the headmaster credited with turning around the local school, Tom Fitzwilliam is beloved by one and all, including Joey Mullen, his new neighbor, who quickly develops an intense infatuation with this thoroughly charming yet unavailable man. Joey thinks her crush is a secret, but Tom's teenage son, Freddie, a prodigy with aspirations of becoming a spy for M15, excels in observing people and has witnessed Joey behaving strangely around her father. A murder ensues, and you are just not sure who in the neighborhood or who in the past has committed this murder. So it's a whodunit, and it's quite the mystery. I listened to this on audio, and the narrator had an excellent British accent, which for me is so fun to listen to, so I would highly recommend this one. I gave it a 4.5 stars. And you're going to get to the last book that I mentioned about the bearded brothers, I think it was, and I DNF'd that one for now. I might pick it up later, but it just wasn't the right time for me to read that. So, Watching You was the last one I finished in March. And I'm currently reading Truth or Beard. And when I read about it online, it's by Penny Reed. There's 6 Winston brothers, 2 of them are twins, and brothers, Dwayne and Bo, she grew up with in school. But there's some stuff that goes on here in this book as I'm finding out about a third of the way there that she's got some intricacies. So that's where I'm at between February and March. loving to read books still, and I will keep on reading them. I've been watching lots of booktubers and getting ideas of other books to try and read. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope if you enjoy reading that you will check out your local library or your local bookstore and give them your support. Whatever it is you enjoy, make sure to keep on reading. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to our channel. We put out videos every Tuesday. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.